Alright guys, the transfer rumour mill is not slowing down right now. We've got a bunch more transfer rumours to dive into today. As always, I want to hear from you in the comments down below. 500 likes on today's video would be massively appreciated, but without any further ado, let's jump in. So we'll start out with the Rob Edwards news. We did discuss this one in yesterday's video, but it has since been confirmed. Rob Edwards has left his post at Luton following that defeat away at QPR. Now there can be no doubt Luton have been one of the biggest underachievers this season, and I think the club at the end of the day probably did give Edwards the adequate time to try and change things around, but as of right now the club are in a relegation battle and that's not where they expected to be. In terms of who comes in next, there's already been some early talks potentially with the likes of Steve Cooper being linked. There's been a few murmurings maybe that Nathan Jones could be in for another return to Kenilworth Road, but Luton fans, I'd be interested to get your verdict. Who would you like to see coming in and replacing Edwards? It looks as if Rene Hake could be going in as the next West Brom manager. According to some reports, the Baggies have verbally agreed a deal with the former Manchester United coach to take over the reins from Carlos Corberán. Now, he is a fairly experienced manager, having taken charge of over 370 games during his coaching career so far. He was most recently the assistant at Man United and is currently without a club and looking to throw himself back into the game. Baggies fans, what would you make of that appointment? And of course, we've still got Plymouth Argyle searching for their Wayne Rooney replacement. David Wagner was one of the latest bosses to be linked with the job, but reportedly after some talks had taken place, Wagner's decided that he's not interested in the job. Now, a few days ago it seemed more than likely that Steven Schumacher would be the automatic sort of favourite to get that job, but talks of him taking over once again at Home Park have fallen a bit silent in recent days as well. Plymouth obviously have a little bit of respite right now because we're going into an FA Cup weekend. You know, we've not got any Championship action this weekend, but I mean, they desperately need to get this sorted as soon as possible, don't they? Elsewhere in the Championship, we saw Daniel Jebison being recalled from his loan spell with Watford, where he struggled to make much of an impression in the first half of the season. Only started in 3 league matches for Tom Cleverley's side, came off the bench on 10 occasions as well, but that loan spell has been cut short. I wouldn't be surprised if he's sent out on loan elsewhere in the EFL for the second half of the campaign. And quite interestingly, we also saw Lewis Baker being recalled from his loan spell with Blackburn Rovers. He's now back at Stoke City for the second half of the season. Obviously someone that Robins wants to integrate back into that Stoke squad for the second half of the campaign, and they have been a little bit short in central midfield, Stoke, recently with some of the injuries that have accumulated in that position. First half of the season he played 596 minutes of football for Blackburn. Obviously someone who can be deadly from set-piece situations, and at 29 I still think he can add something to that Stoke midfield. Timoteusz Pujac has signed for Plymouth Argyle. I've definitely butchered the pronunciation of his name, so apologies, but Plymouth have agreed a deal with the Polish international to sign him on loan for the remainder of this season, and they also have the option to purchase him on a permanent basis at the end of the campaign should they choose. He's a 25-year-old left-back who's coming over from Germany, has been capped 15 times by Poland, and despite all the uncertainty behind the scenes at Plymouth Argyle in terms of their next manager, they've been fairly proactive so far in terms of their transfer business. But those are a few of the done deals that have gone through in the Championship recently. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into the rumours. So the big story we've got in the Championship right now relates to Enzo Lefay and his move to Sunderland. According to Fabrizio Romano, the player is on his way to Sunderland today to have his medical. That will be a loan deal until the end of the season, but Sunderland will have the obligation to purchase him if they are promoted to the Premier League. I've seen it reported that that buy option is worth around about 23 million as well, so not cheap, but obviously someone that moved to Roma fairly recently for a big chunk of change. Also worth reporting that according to Romano, Sunderland will be covering his full salary until the end of the season, which I'm sure will be pretty hefty. He'll no doubt be on a decent contract at Roma, but make no mistake about it, this is a huge statement of intent from Sunderland and their owners to really push that squad towards automatic promotion in this second half of the campaign. I think quite a few of us, myself included, have been maybe a bit guilty at times of sort of overlooking Sunderland in the automatic promotion hunt. You know, we've predominantly been talking about the likes of Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United, but make no mistake about it, Sunderland are definitely in that race as well, and if they have a really ambitious January window, which it looks like they might, yeah, they really could have a good run in this second half of the campaign. We've also had confirmation that Isaiah Jones is on his way to Luton. He's set to have a medical at Kenilworth Road, with Middlesbrough accepting a deal in the region of £5 million for the winger. Obviously, there were a few Championship clubs interested, but we said in yesterday's video it looked like Luton who were leading the race to sign him, and it does appear as if that deal will be going through. I do think it's always a bit of a gamble when you're signing players and you don't have a permanent manager installed, obviously with Rob Edwards just leaving. I know it's the case in modern football where it's very rare that the manager is the person signing the players, if you will, but Luton could very much end up in a case where whoever comes in as their next manager doesn't particularly want someone like an Isaiah Jones maybe, or someone of his skill set and his side, and they look to play a different way. So there's always a bit of a gamble signing players when you don't have a permanent first team manager, but I do rate Isaiah Jones and I think he needs a fresh start somewhere else. Now, a couple of days ago we spoke about Kelechi Iheanacho and his links to Watford, with Watford supposedly making a loan inquiry, seeing about the availability of the Sevilla star, who's sort of been a bit of an outcast in Spain this season. Well, since then it's since transpired that the likes of Wolves and Ipswich are also interested in bringing him in, which would probably end Watford's pursuit of the former Leicester City star. Ryan Ledson is attracting interest from a number of Championship clubs right now. Among those clubs are believed to be Portsmouth. Now, the Preston midfielder is out of contract at the end of the season, so he does find himself at a bit of a crossroads in his career right now. And to be honest, I think this could be a decent move for all parties involved. If I'm honest with you, I think Ledson would add something, a little bit of bite to that Pompey midfield, and he's still at a decent age where, you know, he's 27, he'll want to be playing regular first team football, and Preston just can't really offer him that right now. You know, if you look at the makeup of that North End midfield, Ledson's currently behind Whiteman, McCann and Tord Arson in the pecking order. He's only started in 4 Championship matches so far this season. I think he's still a useful player to North End, being that sort of backup option, but if Ledson's at that stage of his career where he wants to be playing week in, week out, I just can't see him getting that at Preston anytime soon. The move to somewhere like Portsmouth may be a decent one for his career, but there are a number of Championship clubs who are supposedly interested. There are also supposedly a few Championship clubs who are interested in Preston's Emil Rees, who finds himself in a similar situation to Ledson where he is out of contract at the end of the season. Now, Rees is a little bit of a different issue to Ledson in the way that he is more of a regular starter for North End, and if we were to lose him on a free transfer at the end of the season, I think we'd be losing quite a bit of value, if you will. Now, don't get me wrong, Emil Rees can be a really frustrating player. He's a very hot and cold sort of striker in the Championship, but he's clearly someone that Paul Heckingbottom rates, you know, more often than not. It has been Emil Rees leading the line under Hecky this season. He scored 7 goals and got 2 assists so far. I think North End will do their bit to try and tie him down to a new contract, but with his deal set to expire at the end of the campaign, a few Championship clubs supposedly interested. The player sort of has the power in this situation, if we're being honest. Rees may want a fresh start somewhere else. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it would be the end of the world if Preston were to lose him, but I certainly think he could be an asset to a number of Championship clubs. Going back to a bit of Pompey news, it's obvious they're looking to strengthen their midfield at the moment because it seems like they've struck an agreement with Newcastle midfielder Isaac Hayden. Now, Hayden hasn't featured for Newcastle so far this season. I think a move out in January was always going to be inevitable. Now, according to reports, initially it will be a loan deal that sees Hayden signing for Pompey until the end of the season. After that, he'll have 1 year remaining on his Newcastle contract where, I mean, he may head out on loan again. He might not want to give up that Newcastle contract where I'm sure he's on a decent wage at the moment, but that move back to the Championship seems pretty solidified. We've spoken about Illan Meslier a few times on the channel recently. Well, since yesterday's update, Daniel Farke has come out and sort of publicly backed the Leeds United goalkeeper and saying sort of it would be foolish to sell him at this stage with Leeds currently sat top of the Championship. Now, going into an FA Cup weekend, Leeds will be rotating their goalkeepers. It will be Darlow who's given a chance against Harrogate. It'll be interesting to see if Darlow can strike a claim for nabbing that number 1 spot off Meslier, but I mean, Farke's always been quite high on Meslier whenever he's spoken about the French goalkeeper in the press. I don't think Leeds fans expected anything other than him to continue backing him. Something different may be going on behind the scenes, but from Farke's perspective, he seems happy enough to keep the goalkeeper until at least the end of the season, despite a lot of the rumours that continue to swirl about his potential exit. An interesting story relating to Liam Kitching is apparently Blackburn Rovers have held talks with Coventry over a potential deal for the 25-year-old. Now, up until this point of the season, the defender's only started in 7 championship matches for Coventry, but worth noting, he did play 90 minutes over the weekend in that 2-1 defeat against Norwich, so still seems like he's part of the plans there under Frank Lampard. But Blackburn looking to bolster their defensive options. It's interesting that they are looking at the Coventry defender right now. Cov fans, I'd be interested to get your verdict on that one in the comments down below. By this point, it feels like pretty much every championship club has been linked with a move for Louie Barry. Well, Millwall are the latest championship side to throw their hat in the ring and try and sign the Aston Villa youngster, at least on loan until the end of the season. Now, Millwall find themselves in a position where Esse obviously has a bit of an uncertain long-term future. We spoke about him in last time's video and how Crystal Palace may push to get his signature in this January window. Obviously, Millwall won't want to leave themselves short in the final third, and bringing in someone like Barry would offset the loss of Esse if he was to depart in this window. But there's still obviously plenty of championship clubs vying for the Aston Villa youngster's signature, and as of recording right now, he's seemingly not made up his mind in terms of where he actually wants to go. Well guys, there you have it. That will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and get all your thoughts in the comments down below. Other than that though guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.